Welcome to Big Hearted Indy, where we empower men and Indianapolis to forge deep connections and impactful lives through authentic friendships and service. Join us as we explore personal growth, community leadership, and the transformative power of living out our faith in action. The podcast is produced by Citizen 7, and it is hosted by Greg Enas, Don Palmer, and I am Chris Spangle. Our guests today are Bob Grand and Mandy Pietrykowski. Did I do it? Oh, I got it perfect. Okay. Don was grating his teeth, as I said.
I want you to say that 10 times.
No. We only have an hour.
Mandy P.
Mandy from Little Red Door.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about Little Red Door. And why don't you set us up, Don, and tell us a little bit about why we're talking about Little Red Door today and who are Mandy and Bob?
Yeah. Well, I think that, many of our podcasts have been about friendship. And Bob and I have been friends for a long time. But we also are he and I shared a friend named P. McAllister. And P.E. was a mentor to both Bob and I, and quite a character. I mean, was it scotch? I remember he'd come, even if you had no drinks there, he'd say, "Hey, I know you got scotch in the back," but from McAllister Equipment. And he shared with me one time, he said, "Don, here's, three kind of guides." He says, "You need to honor God, help your friends, and adore your city." So as I looked at that, says in terms of Bob is one of the greatest helper of friends that you could ever meet. And in terms of adoring your city, what we're here about, and why Mandy and Bob are here, is how do we make this city flourish? How do we do things that we should all care about? So I think that's the backdrop. So maybe to start off, maybe Bob, just tell a little about who you are, where you grew up, and
Well, I grew up in Northwest Indiana, Munster, Indiana, and had a great childhood. Was raised essentially by the village. My dad was hurt in a very serious accident, so I was raised by the coaches and teachers, and in that got a tremendous feeling about what it is to pay back. And I was, and the mentor, the kind of father figure to me, in addition, the coach was a guy that talked about that a lot. So as I went through my experiences, I always had a thought about how it was best to give back. And so I've done some of that. And I always like to point out when people ask me of all the things that were the most humorous. And I think the most humorous was when Russ Pulliam wrote an article about me one time and said that it's the most unlikely guy that I would have ever thought that would be out doing all these things for then outreach. I was doing that and whatever. And he went through this characterization of all the things that I'd done. And then at the conclusion said, but at some point he does have a heart. So that was a nice compliment. It was a nice compliment in a nice way. So that's great.
And your day job for many years?
Many years. I was a partner at Barnes & Thornburg. I started at Bingham Summers for 4 years, and I actually worked for Bob Orr when he was lieutenant governor, and then went to Bingham Summers for 4 years, and went to Barnes & Thornburg in 1987, and was elected to the management committee in 1995, and actually became the managing partner in 2014. So had a wonderful career, practiced law in a number of areas, and was fortunate to see a lot of growth at Barnes & Thornburg. When I went there were 100 lawyers in 3 offices, and when I left, there were 850 lawyers in probably 28 offices, so 26 offices. I lost count. So,
well, lawyers don't have much ego and everything. I'm sure it was a really easy thing managing 850 lawyers.
Yeah, well, I don't want to digress too further, but all I would say is when I took over, I went on the board of our homeowners association at Florida, and after the first meeting, and they act through a lot of machinations, I ended up being the chairman. And after they were yelling and screaming about the last board, very animated, and have to walk out a gentleman older than I was, so he was old, stuck in front of 3 other women and said, we really were surprised you never lost your temper at all during a meeting. You just managed the meeting And I leaned in and I said, well, my last job, I managed almost 850 lawyers, so I'm used to people yelling at me.
That's great. Well, Bob, why don't you introduce Mandy, since you know her, and tell us all, but including Mandy, something that you think she may not know about you as you introduce, or vice versa.
No, I just was going to try to survive the sheet. Obviously, I've told her I've been around so long that, I guess the best way to introduce Mandy is that Mandy came on board and we started working together on the fundraising and on the things. And the only thing that, the only rule that I have at the Little Red Door, and this has been for all 35 years, is that, just don't change anything and don't do anything. Just let me do it. Okay. So, I mean, it sounds terrible in a sense, but I have this thing down to the point where I know who's going to contribute. I know how to get the foursomes. I know what to do. We've been fortunate enough to sell this out for many years. But as a new person coming in, every once in a while, the executive director has to say to him, no, the guy's really serious. So Mandy came to our office at first meeting and I think was, this is our large fundraiser and and thinking that we could come up with all these ideas. And I think I dissuaded her very quickly by just saying, Mandy, let's just, I'll call you and make the reservation and we'll do that. But then I think the best and working closely with her, but then I was involved a little bit on the outside just because of my longtime involvement. I'm no longer on the board. One of the conditions I did to do the tournament was to get off the board because, I don't like to serve on boards forever and ever. But in that transition with Fred, he was very excited about the fact that Mandy would be a candidate, if you will, to take over. And I think that those of us who had worked with her and those of us who have a long-standing relationship with the charity said that this would be great hands.
So Mandy, why don't you tell us a little bit about Little Red Door? What do you do? Is it local, national? What role does Bob play? Tell us a little bit about the organization and then how you got involved.
Perfect. Well, first, that was exactly the words verbatim what he shared with me when we first met, I believe. And I said, as long as the dollars are there, I will not challenge you, sir. We've been getting along well since then. Little Red Door has been making the most of life and least of cancer since 1945 for medically underserved Hoosiers. And so cancer does not discriminate. Neither do we. We serve kiddos. Our youngest right now just celebrated their 7th month birthday, and our oldest is 98 that we're providing services for. So we are an independent. We're the oldest independent cancer agency in the state of Indiana. So no chapters, no charters. It's just us for 80 years because of this community rallying around us to be able to support the greatest needs.
And Mandy, tell us a little bit about your story. Where did you grow up? Yeah. And a little bit of what formed you to this point here.
Yeah, I grew up here in Indianapolis, so Southsider. Family had a small business. My parents were divorced when I was young. One family had a tractor business and the other family had a farm. So it worked out well. Very much grew up in an entrepreneurial family household. I was one of the first in my family to go to college. Went to Indiana University in Bloomington because it's gorgeous there. No offense to Wabash. Right. It's pretty. No. Right. Went there, thought that I wanted to first go into education, and then spending some time in education, I fell in love with nonprofit settings. I wasn't exposed to many nonprofits growing up. And when I had the ability to go and see a nonprofit and what they were doing and the impact that they were having, I knew that's something that I wanted to get involved with more. I thought I wanted to be frontline, which in my speak, that is the one actually delivering the services to a client. Quickly realized that I was a stronger fundraiser in marketing because it's hard. It's hard to work with a client directly day in and day out, and you have to have really good boundaries, and it's emotionally a lot. And so I quickly, as I said, found that I was better on the fundraising side, doing the things that you're not supposed to do, talking to people about money in life. And so fell in love with healthcare fundraising, and I've been there ever since. So it's going on, what is it now, 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah, nonprofit work.
Fantastic.
So what does, from 7 months to, what do you say, in 90s, a person was, how old was the person?
Oh, yeah, 7 month. Sorry, 7-month-old has been diagnosed with rare brain cancer. And so they are getting treated at Riley right now. And so there's not a lot that they can do for a 7-month-old with brain cancer. What Little Red Door can do for them is the family lives in northern Indiana, actually not too far from where Bob grew up. and they have to come to Riley. And so for medically underserved cancer patients, for a child, that can look 1,000 different ways. But for the majority of our Hoosier kiddos, once they're diagnosed, their parents can have the best insurance possible. But within that first about 12 to 16 months, their insurance are going to be tapped out. And so those kids will end up on Medicaid. And in the state of Indiana, you have to go to Riley or you have to go to Peyton. So there's not a lot of oncologists, pediatric oncologists throughout the state of Indiana, and those that are accessible are in Indianapolis. And so this family has to commute down from the region every week to Riley for treatment. Because of donors like Bob and those in this community, we can help offset that transportation cost to get that family down here.
So transportation costs are one way that you serve. But tell us, I mean, I know you have a camp and we hear a lot about cancer, and one of my best friends is a guy named Dr. Pat Lair, who ran the IU Salmon Cancer Center. So
big fan.
I've heard a lot of stories through Pat. But yeah, just tell us, or maybe give us an example. You don't have to have the last name, but, a couple of stories of way that you've served some families.
So making the most of life in the least of cancer can look a variety of ways. Real life example that happened last Thursday. We are moving our Muncie office. So we have 2 brick and mortars here, one in Indianapolis and one up in Muncie. If anyone's familiar, off of Tillotson, really close to IU Ball Memorial up there. The lady came in and she was, she was in her early 60s. She had a scarf around her head. It was rainy. She looked like she was having a hard day. She just came from treatment. She was getting a boutique fitting. And so in addition to the transportation and nutrition, we also provide a boutique. And so at the boutique, she was able to come in and get a wig. And it fit her perfectly. We're one of the only boutiques in the state that you can come in and get fitted for a wig and leave with the wig the same day. And so for her, when she walked out, her shoulders were back. She walked a little taller, walked a little prouder. And she said it was her grandpa that referred her here. We were able to help her grandmother years ago. And so she remembered that. And when she was diagnosed, she was like, oh, the Little Red Door, if they're still around, I'm going to call them. And we were still around. So I can do another story if you want.
Sure, that'd be great.
In addition to the camp that we host at Bradford Woods, which is our overnight or sleepaway camp, as the kids call it, we also host Camp in the City. And because of the golf outing that Bob hosts for us annually, we've been able to expand on all of our camp offerings. So Camp in the City started in 2018. 2 weeks ago, we had a young woman come, age 11, was diagnosed with a rare spinal tumor. And so with peds in the state of Indiana, it's mainly going to be brain cancer, a lymphatic cancer, leukemia, and some of the CNSs as well. But her spinal tumor, the first treatment that she had, took some use of her legs away. She was able to go through rehab and get all full use again. Cancer came back. Surgery took all use of her legs. And so here she came to us, 11 years old. She'd just been to Bradford Woods. So she got to do all the things at Bradford, but she wanted to continue to come to camp. And so she came to Camp in the City. And we got her in partnership with Ben's Ranch on a horse. And it was the first time since that surgery that she has not been in a wheelchair and had free movement and access in life. And so that is the gift of Little Red Door. And that's what making the most of life and the least of cancer is all about. So we know cancer's there and it's hard and it's a rough path, but because of faith, because of hope, because of great humans rallying around us, we're able to give those moments back to Lainey and back to the other kids that need it.
Well, those are 2 beautiful stories, Mandy. Thank you. And Bob, I wanted to just turn to you. Of all the myriad of opportunities, and you're involved in a lot, why are you so passionate about what Mandy just shared in Little Red Door? What's behind your why?
Well, I think it goes back to the very beginning. And as I had mentioned, I had developed a close relationship with a gentleman by the name of Eldon Campbell, who was at the Methodist Health Foundation. And he was the chairman of the board at Little Red Door. And over the years of discussion and whatever, we got to be pretty close. And so he became ill, and a gentleman, another beta Hanover. I explained that I met him when I was redoing the chapter at Hanover as a Wabash baiter. A little bit hard to do, but ended up getting it done. And he, but another guy who was younger than him, Jim Richter, was the then just newly elected president of the Little Red Door. He was kind of mentored by Eldon Campbell in both his career. He had a great career at CVS, now CVS, whatever it was before. I forget the name of it. The big pharmacy group. Anyway. And so, they had done some things and I got to know them. And so the story went that Jim Richter, so Eldon Campbell passed away, and Jim Richter called me one morning and wanted to meet me for breakfast. And we had this breakfast that would just not end. I mean, he was just going on and on about things. And I love the guy, but, I'm looking at my watch and I'm practicing law and I got to be going and, whatever. And I'm literally an hour and 20 minutes into it. And finally he stops. He goes, now, the real reason I had this breakfast is because Eldon Campbell asked me, not his last thing, but, one of his last things that he mentioned to me was, he said, you got to get that blankety blank Bob Grand on that Little Red Door board. Now, if you knew my relation with Eldon Campbell and you knew the things that he'd done for me, it's like, how are you going to say no to that, right? So I then joined the board and I did my term of service. And then on the board, we had a committee that was doing the golf outing, and I volunteered for that. So that's how I first got involved. And I made a deal with them that I would continue to run the golf outing if they let me off the board after my first term. So I did.
As long as you keep raising money.
Right.
I think that was the deal.
Keep raising
right?
money. That was the deal, right. So that's how I got involved. And it's once you experience the camp dynamics, and once and I've only been one time, I think, and because there's always time when I was out, but obviously read about it, been involved in it, helped people. A lot of people have gone to the camp. Once you experience it, it's remarkable.
Mandy, your stories really resonate. Without Little Red Door, what is the current state of affairs for families who are on government assistance and whatnot? And what kind of mark does the funding that you're talking about raising in Little Red Door, what's the difference that's being made overall? And where might you want us to advocate going forward so that some of the problems that you're seeking to address can be mitigated in other ways?
Well, my programs committee would love to have you, sir.
Okay.
We have, there's a lot of, we're not certain, to be completely honest with you. There's a lot of uncertainty coming out right now. What is insurance going to look like? What is healthcare going to look like? I think our biggest concern at the Little Red Door right now on the future of healthcare is, what does rural healthcare delivery look like? Because we know if we're talking dollars, we know that from a sense of transportation support to get someone from one side of Muncie to central Muncie to get treatment will be roughly $10, 40 miles of support. But if they need to now close that hospital and go down to Henry County or Madison County or Marion County, that's going to exponentiate what that cost per ride is going to be. And so that's something that we're paying a lot of attention to right now. So we're studying what does healthcare access look like pre kind of affordable care? What does it look like now? What are we in our crystal ball, the best that we can do? How can we make sure that we're still here supporting and filling in those gaps for Hoosiers? So we anticipate the biggest need for our Hoosiers being, whether you're adult or a peds, is being transportation to get to and from that critical treatment. We're so blessed in this community to have incredible doctors and nurses and research facilities and pharmas. But if you can't get to them, it doesn't matter that our community has those resources. And so being able to get those people to the resources they need to that care is really, really, really critical, especially for that underserved population. And then nutrition. When you go in for that first appointment, a lot of your treatment plan, whether you're 7 months old or 87 or 97, is going to be based on what your body mass is in that first treatment appointment. And so your chemotherapy, your radiation, your casting, all of that is based around that. So once you start losing that body mass, your cancer treatment has to stop and has to be reassessed and evaluated. And that is costly for the hospital system. That's costly for the patient. That's costly for the doctor. It's everyone. And so being able to provide that nutritional support through treatment is really critical for us.
And that happens in between treatments. So you're providing a light. You're providing daily care almost. It's not just transportation to and from the doctor, but in between on the nutritional side.
Keeping people fed is critical. So we use Boost mainly. And so our friends at Nestle just up the street in Anderson create some of the Boost that we use. But we've been able to negotiate a buying power about $21 a case. With Boost right now, if you're going to go buy that off the shelves, it's about $36. And so when somebody asks me, can I give you a case of Boost? I often say, can I have the money instead? Because I can double how much meals that I can buy with that. So if my board chair were here and some of Bob's pals that are on the board right now, they would say we're very entrepreneurial. We're 80 years old, but we're very much always in startup, looking for that next influx of cash and services that we can provide, trying to anticipate what the community needs are.
Are there other patients outside of cancer patients that are looking to Little Red Door as a model to help other critical illnesses sort of develop this kind of model to help their underserved families?
We spend a lot of time talking to other groups and trying to share our lessons learned. So in the nonprofit sector, we know we can't get through and survive and sustain without great partnerships. And so whenever we have a piece of knowledge that we can share with others, we're happy to lend that to them and share lessons learned, celebrations, losses, all of the things that come with trying.
I've heard with the new IU vertical going up on 16th Street that we're seeking to make this state the healthiest in the nation. What's behind that, and what role do you all and how can we all help move that goal forward?
We work with all the hospital systems. So any of my other friends listening right now, we work with Community and Franciscan and Ascenzi and all that. But IU Health, we know, is serving about a third of all Hoosiers for their healthcare needs. And so what they're constructing here in Indianapolis is really going to be transformational for the community. What I'm most excited to see is they're bringing in more research power. And so we know we need, the way that we're going to get to cures is more research and more innovation and more machines, more people. Riley is doing a huge campaign right now, getting the right pediatrician, oncologist, the right pediatrician, anything into the state of Indiana. And that is really going to transform Hoosier healthcare for us.
That is beautiful.
So, Bob, you've been around this for 35 years. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little ADHD. Maybe my wife would say you're a lot ADHD. So, after 8 or 10 years, boy, I'm ready to do something different. How do you, with running a law firm and doing your political work, how do you not burn out, or how do you keep fresh when it comes to caring about the Little Red Door?
Well, I think there's a simple answer. There's always a complex answer, but the complex answer is, goes along the lines of, you got to find things in your life that you're passionate about. And when you do, it's sometimes hard to give those up. So I think that's where I would put Little Red Door. But the realistic piece was I was able to combine my passion with my business, because one of the ways that I built the Little Red Door tournament, once we decided, the group of us that were working on it, that we had to get more campers and we had to raise more money, which was, of course, all that I ever did. So that's the only reason everybody brought me to the party, but that's okay. And the idea being that, how do we do that? And so I went to friends of mine, Republicans and Democrats, I might add. I involved people. I used to have a celebrity guest list, right? I'd invite celebrities, many of them who were government. So a lot of people back then, and again, the ethics rules were a little different. Everybody would stretch these like it's nefarious. It wasn't nefarious, but we would have folks that were doing things in Indiana that would give something back. So the reason why this tournament's on a morning and the night before is a dinner at St. Elmo's, in which the Hughes family have been great supporters of the Little Red Door and of our dinner for all these years, is because a lot of folks were coming in, wanted to play the Brickyard, were coming from New York. They were underwriters, they were lawyers, they were business people, they were things, but a lot of them were doing things in Indiana. And so it was a way for me, and this is the argument I made to a lot of political folks, was here's a group of people coming in. They want to obviously meet with some of you and your staff and whatever, but also they want to give something back. Mm-hmm. And so it was easy to combine that. And then over the years, what's happened is, frankly, it became so much more successful that now all the people that have their foursomes don't want celebrity guests because they're bringing their clients. And so it's really true. I mean, some of the noteworthy folks that for all these years have come, Dave Serto is a great example, the judge of Marion County, a guy named Jeff Elliott, who was on the security with Goldsmith back in the day. But I've invited some of those folks continuously back just out of loyalty and the things that they have done for the tournament. But so what I do at the tournament now, which is one of my things that gets a lot of comments, is at both the dinner and the luncheon, I introduce all these people who are now out in the, that were former chiefs of staff, whatever it is, people that used to be important that are no longer important. Right. So I introduce them all, and they all get a big kick out of it. But, deputy mayors, former mayors, Greg Ballard has shown up at every little red door. He's going to be at the dinner again this year. But a lot of those folks that you could name, a lot of officials in the governor's, Betsy Wiley, former chief of staff to Mitch. A lot of those people now play in the tournament, and their companies play in the tournament. So that's why I was passionate about it, because that's why I've said to all these staff people, with all due respect, there's a group of people out there that I know are coming. Some of these folks have come for 20, 25 years. Yeah. I have a group of guys are coming in for this, I think is their 20th, 25th. So.
And it's truly fueling camp. I think that's what's really special about this event. And I hope it is to your players. When they make those donations, it's sending a child to camp that couldn't go without that. We're not scraping dollars off. It's not going to any branding or anything like that. It's truly going to kids that need it.
And if I could, just one quick story about that, which is very interesting to make her point, is that so for years, tournaments, they sell mulligans to raise extra money. But, you sell mulligans, it takes up more time because have people more shots. I'll go back several years ago and said, people asked me to donate shirts and golf balls. I said, no. Don't donate anything. Just give me the money. Okay, I need the money. I don't want your golf balls. Guys don't need another shirt. Really. And guys and I'd announce that every year. So people started laughing about it. They go, grand. So they quit giving me shirts. They quit giving me balls. They gave me more money. But the point is that, and that's why we do our tournament with no raffles, no anything. We do, we just do the tournament. But what we did a couple of years ago, we were doing as mulligans or whatever, and we had all these foursomes. So I came up with the idea, look, if you come, you can sponsor a backpack for a camper. Okay. So you can imagine we made more money selling backpacks than we did selling mulligans, right? Because, most of these people don't pay for their foursome. Their company pays for it. Yeah. So they show up and they do that. But that was the point of the message of the kids. And the last thing I would say is that just to understand, every year for 30 years, I guess, I don't know what we did right at the beginning, we've had a camper come and speak. And I'm telling you, you can put a pin drop at the end of that. And I have had people that have walked up to me after the luncheon and said, hey, I'm sending another check, or it's just so moving to have these kids get up there and talk about what their experience is for a week. When you get dropped off, your parents, right? The doctor last year gave a speech at our dinner. Lady pulls up, her daughter got cancer, her son doesn't. You get to bring a sibling to the camp, stops up, has this whole list, and she looks at the mother and she says, I have your son's file or your daughter's file. I have all the drugs here. Have a nice week. So how comforting would that be, right? You drop off your kid, you get a week where, they're...
And that respite's important to the parents. Yeah. It's a critical piece.
So, Bob, you have probably one of the most enviable old-fashioned term Rolodexes in the state. People say, oh, yours is, mine's really good. No, I said, I'm going to defer to Bob Grant, Dave Knapp, a few of those guys that take it to a new level. And so if someone was sitting here as a young professional, as a lawyer, and saying, well, but that's Bob Grant. He can make these things happen. You obviously, in terms of your generosity with other people's causes, the way you treat others, what would you say is part of the secret sauce of your just how to win friends and influence people in just your sincerest heart?
Well, the only reason why you ever let the story be told is because you hope that it influences people. And I make light of the fact that, what Russ, making mention about, people, quote unquote, in your positions or whatever. But, we do the things you guys have sponsored have been wonderful. The younger groups, and you mentioned Neff and some of the groups that they're putting together. And, we've done a seminar with those folks that you hosted. We had enough with those folks and had some great outreach as a result of that. But, it's a very simple message. You guys have it down to a science, but it's, you have to get in front of people, and everybody asks the same question, why? And I just say, look, you've got to do something, and it's got to be passionate. I mentioned about mixing it with business, of course, because every people who knows me would laugh and think that, but you can't do it if you don't have the passion. And what I tell all these folks is, build your Rolodex now. It's a lot easier because you got emails, and emails don't change. When you're building it with phones, regular hardline phones and street addresses, it changes a lot. But the real issue is you got to be passionate, and you have to have an introspection. And we say this a lot. You go to a camp, you sit down and you look at what actually happens to these people. And if you come away from that and you don't have a feeling about, I want to do something, then I got to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because, and there's a lot of things, right? It's not just this camp, but this camp is amazing from that standpoint, because think of these kids, right? These kids are really, in a lot of cases, they're survivors, but they do a ceremony every year for the kids that don't survive. You talk about gut wrenching, go down to that one, right? And we have parents that show up whose kids didn't survive years ago. They still drive down for that ceremony. Why? Because that camp was a part for their kid in a terrible disease where they actually experienced, riding a horse, doing a zip line, throwing horseshoes, fishing, shooting ski, whatever, that they would never be able to do.
Yeah.
Do you find, Bob, that those that just write checks and are not involved with their talents and their time they must be important, but you obviously are an example where your time, talent, and treasure has been involved. How do we, in fact, encourage the young guys to think about that as they grow families, grow their businesses, relative to just writing a check versus putting time and talent behind a movement?
Greg, I got asked that question not too long ago, and of course I answered, I really am not. I'm agnostic about I'll take the check, but in seriousness, I mean, it's hard because the substitute mentality is, I'm doing something, I'm just not doing the next level. And I have found, frankly, and as a fundraiser, I've found I'm okay with that to a degree, because at least I've gotten something out of them and they've made a commitment. And to go to the next level and say, well, that's really not enough, is sometimes a hard deal. So what I try to target that, by the way, by talking to people about levels of their giving. So if you are somebody, and I've had this conversation with a number of young people, you talk to people in our law firm, where you're just writing a check, you're writing a larger check because you're going to make up for that fact that you're not contributing time, just treasure. And so, but I found over the course of time that, and this sounds terrible, but I'd rather just take the check and move on rather than try to, and try to have the moments like we do where we convene people, where they can hear about what other people are doing it, and maybe it catches them. But some people, it doesn't catch them, yet they write a check. But it's a hard one.
Because in some instances, people, given their lifestyle, their billable hours, they got some things, and if they can write a check, they can facilitate people to do the work.
That's right.
They're not at that season of life.
Yeah.
But it comes back to your background too. If people helped you, right? It's like, what's the most irritating thing in the world? People have asked me over the years, particularly as I'm managing lawyers, but lawyers are not that bad. They're good people and they work hard. But what's the thing that bothers you the most? And I have answered this question for 40 years. The thing that bothers me the most is people that think nobody helped them get where they were.
Yeah.
Right? You hear people, well, I made it on my own.
Yeah.
I did this. I went to college. My parents didn't, I didn't get any aid when they were ignoring the endowment that paid for half of their education. I mean, but it's true. Those are the people. And I've spent not a lot. I've spent time with people like that, and I laugh because every single one of them, I say, well, I'm just glad that I'm not you. And they go, why not? I go, so I'm just glad I wasn't that fortunate, because my life has been molded by people that have helped me all along the way. Don helped me when we were doing the first outreach thing. He had access, I don't know how he did it, but he had access to automobiles, at that point. So, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's what the true learning experience is. So if you say that to people and you go and you put on things and like you guys do, it works, I think. Or it should.
So Bob and I served as elders together at Second Press. You're a founder of Citizen 7, along with several of us. You're involved in outreach. So how does faith play into public service for you?
Because at the end of the day, why do you have the things that you have? Okay. So if you look at it and you're honest about it, again, going back to what irritates me, right? People have helped me all along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So has my faith, has my trust, has my religion, has my worship, has that helped me? Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you subscribe to the values that you have, that you learned. I learned those values. Yeah. I learned it as a young kid. Like I said, I was raised by a coach that was a very strong Christian. Didn't say you had to be a Christian, but lived his life like that. So when he would say to you, here's your trials and tribulations, here's the things you're going through, have some faith. You had some faith.
Yeah. You've got 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
You've obviously valued all the people that you've mentored over the years at Barnes & Thornburg, been mentored by the Eldon Campbells and some of the other people, maybe Bob Orr of the world.
100%.
What have you done to kind of transfer your values to your sons?
Well, I've been fortunate because both of my sons, I think, have done very well, and I'm very proud that my oldest son is now on the Little Red Door board. So that was a big thing. And a number of the lawyers that I mentored are Jake German, another guy that has been on the board. Many people have been. So that's one. But both of my kids are very charitable. I read the book, The Greatest Gift, years ago, and, the lesson there was, kind of a simple one. I just told my kids when they were starting out in business that I would double whatever contribution they made, and they got in the habit of making contributions, and now they're very generous. I no longer double them because they're both making plenty of money, but
that still exists.
But I did, but that book had a big parable in there about, here's how you get people to get them motivated. So I'm proud. I mean, they come at things a little different than I do, and that's fine. But we've been, and I now I'm working on my 2 granddaughters because I'm done with them. I told them I studied one course in law school. It's really helped me. I was called the generation skipping tax. So I'm done with them, and I'm passing it all to my granddaughters. So.
And Mandy, how about some of your background story, your gratitude that's empowered you and what you're doing here? What's a little bit behind that there?
I've had incredible mentors and allies throughout my life. When I reflect back, men, women, family, professors, a variety of people that have helped shape and give me the gifts that I need to continue on. And I was taught very early on, if you want to love your life, love what you do. And it's odd to call this a job, honestly. And so every day I leave my office knowing I did something good for someone that day, whether it was a staff or a board member or a client. Just it's this incredible feeling of just gratitude that you have to be able to say, this is your life. This is what I get to do. This is every day I get to wake up and know what I'm doing today matters to someone. And so it's very much, if you've ever read the starfish story, where
sure.
I love that. It's for those that don't know it, it's walking along the beach and there's a starfish after a storm, and you pick up the one starfish, that there's millions more to come, but you made a difference for that one starfish, and that's what I get at the Little Red Door.
And you must be very blessed to be with families that are very grateful in the midst of trial, in the midst of suffering, yet they're very grateful.
Last week we had a client. She's a mom. She's a single mom. She has treatment's been going really well. She was coming out of a yoga class and got a call about her labs, and it was bad news. And we had 3 other clients that are in the mix of survivorship and active treatment, and to just be able to witness them rallying around her and uplifting her and supporting her, it's just a gift in of itself that we can provide this kind of third space for the cancer community to come and hang out and be together and talk about challenges and tribulations and uplift one another through faith and through hope and laughter and good food and movement and all of the things that we need to survive as humans.
The other thing too I want to say about Mandy, which you witnessed this, which I think, and I said this the other day when people were talking about her background and the fundraising, but you think about now, she's sitting here and you heard these descriptions of all the things. She has a handle on all the things that are happening in medical. She has a handle on all the things that are happening in rural hospitals. I mean, part of this, which I think is exciting for her and why I think a number of people felt as this is a great choice, is because you also in these not-for-profits get an opportunity to give people a chance, right, to really do really good things. And I think it's, you're very modest about all these contributions, and we could sit here all day and talk about these stories. That's really what's really key about the Little Red Door. The Little Red Door has so many stories, and why I think we get so many unsolicited gifts. When you open the mail and somebody has passed away, this is not an infrequent thing. At least it wasn't when I was on the board and all that, is because if you're touching so many people, you just don't know who these people are, who their relatives are, what they think or whatever. But in the back of their mind, right, they're thinking Little Red Door. And what the board has done over the last, starting way a bit before you, but with you in particular, is now we bring a level now of let's the people that are really expertise go do it. Puts a lot more pressure on those that are raising the money, but let's go raise more money. And so when you tell that when you make that argument to people, right, it's even more persuasive, right? And that's why expanding the camps, doing these things on half the people that donate to the tournament, I bet they don't know about our emergency transportation, but that's why we give them those videos. That's why you guys came up with the Face of Hope breakfast. We got to get some of these other things exposed because those will be for donors.
So I've got a friend who's dealing with pancreatic cancer. We all have had friends that have cancer, maybe experience it now, remission. You always feel awkward. You don't know whether to call them. You don't know the right words to say. What would be, maybe 3 tips in terms of if you're dealing, in relationship with a friend or a family member, of what things are sensitive to be helpful?
Yeah, that's a big question, Don. Everyone's different. We'll start with that. So they're coming at cancer differently. Some people they do have a strong faith, and so they can lean heavy on their faith. Other people, their faith gets shaken when they're through this process. What did I do to deserve this cancer? I think the ongoing trend, though, and all the conversations that I've had with people, no matter what their age or diagnosis or stage in life or socioeconomic, is how are you today? And the caregiver too. Don't forget those caregivers. If you're blessed enough to have a caregiver in your life, check in on them. That's one of the most special things that I hear from our campers, is that we checked in on the camper to say, the sibling, but how are you doing? And so just those little things and being there for them. If it's a close friend and that they have a favorite coffee drink from Hubbard's and Craven's, drop that off to them. Just as little acts of kindness can go a really long way with folks. So, and just listening and being there. That's not a direct answer, but
I understand.
That's very helpful.
Any thoughts on that, Bob? You've been around cancer.
I just think at the end of the day, what I've said to people, and I think it's, I think you're 100% right. Everybody reacts differently, but I've had very few people react negatively to the fact when I've texted them or I've called them and said, or they have a difficulty or a loss in their life and say, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to add you to my prayer list. So your prayer list gets pretty long, but at the end of the day, most every response is thank you because we need prayer. So I think at the end of the day, that's probably the best thing you can do. But I don't think, people have a mixed emotion about this. I think you have to kind of, depending on your relationship with the person, I think it shouldn't be one and done. It should be one, and then you should have some indication, maybe in a month, to have a reason to call me. Because I think what patients would tell you that I talk with, not that many, but a number, is that you do get to a point where you're not hearing from anybody, right? And so I think the idea that you have a relationship with somebody, and can you go to see them? And sometimes it's too late. Sometimes they're down the road or they don't want to. I just went through a very tough one for me, but I understood, and the person and the family didn't want visitors. And so you don't get to say your last, thanks or whatever. And I get it, right? I'm not upset about it at all. Not at all. I mean, at the end of the day, I get it. But that's why, as you're going down this, you'd like to be in a position, at least I always wanted to be in a position of people that said, thanks.
Bob, we have been inspired today hearing how you've brought hope and even accelerated healing, not only for cancer patients, but their families as well. And just to take it out one level higher, I'm grateful that your flagship office has been downtown, an iconic presence in downtown Indianapolis. And Citizen 7 is really seeking to love all of Indiana with the love of Jesus, but we're particularly concerned and really want to engage in Metro Indianapolis and downtown Indianapolis in particular. Where is your longing for Indianapolis and downtown Indianapolis, and why are you still there? And what's your vision? How can we engage our network to really come alongside and really take what we've learned from Little Red Door and bring hope and healing to Indiana in general, but in particular through the engine of what's happening downtown?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question because I struggle with it as you do. And I mean, Little Red Door is downtown, and we made a commitment years ago, when I was actually involved in that process, to refurbish those headquarters and make it a permanent fixture on Meridian Street. And so that commitment was there. Barnes and Thornburg has been there for a long time. We have no to my knowledge, and again, I'm out of it at this point, but I don't know of any knowledge to sell and move. I think the challenge is right now is people that have moved to the suburbs, coming downtown. Is that where they really want to be? And the downtown is just coming in today. It was a very difficult situation on Washington Street when I drove down, and so there's a lot of needs there. So I don't know the answer. We could talk about all the politics of it and all that, but I think at the end of the day, what we're doing, you're gracious enough to say, you guys are the founders. We're all along with the certificates of membership, but Citizen 7 and groups like that are really trying to instill in people the need to have a strong downtown, have a strong county, have a strong set of leaders that will step up. And what I've spent my time doing, I just did it the other day, meeting with some young people to say, you got to step up your commitment to downtown.
Okay. Do we have anything? Okay.
Any questions there? Nope. So keep going, Don.
No, I'm good.
We love downtown. We're at 18th and Meridian.
Right.
Corner of Hope and Love. Come and see us anytime.
Yeah. So that was a good segue. How do families how do they become aware and know how to connect with you, and how can others connect?
Well, my least favorite way that people connect is after they start missing those treatments. And then their oncology team will say, why didn't you show up? And they say, I couldn't get here. And so we try to get to people before that. And so once a care team, a hospital healthcare team can identify that this might be a challenge, we say, refer them now. Or better yet, refer them as soon as they've been diagnosed. Because whether you're medically underserved or, perfectly served, we can still support you in some piece of your navigation of the cancer journey. And so we do about 3,000 care packages each year to newly diagnosed Hoosiers. That's full of stuff that we know that's going to be helpful. All the way down to if you can't navigate your electrical bills, how we can use our social capital and connections to get you to the right place to help support those things. Word of mouth is a big one. So once someone has already connected with us, telling their friends and family to connect is the other big, powerful one.
That's beautiful.
But I encourage your listeners today, tell 2 people about Little Red Door if you don't mind for me.
No, that's good. And I believe you're a United Way agency as well. And
yes.
Fred Payne just reached out and said, hey, let's connect. So I'm going to make sure that he keeps running the message out there.
We've been a partner with United Way of Central Indiana since Community Chest days. So we're one of the first groups that joined in with them. Most recently, they helped me replace 77 windows across my agency office. So as Bob indicated, we own our building outright. And so it's support through United Way that we can afford to maintain the maintenance of property.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's really the key. I mean, when you talk about the downtown, you talk about viability is commitments to people to not only be there, but maintain it. And then, we try to do things there, host some things that we can get people to get there because, again, you're trying to tell people a story, in everything. If I do, like for outreach, if I do an open house and I get 10 people there, I mean, 9 of the 10 are going to send a check. Yeah. I mean, I don't have to tell them it's a minimum contribution. I mean, it's just like, well, I mean, I just think that's what you have to do. And what I've encouraged people, and I'm not trying to be, this is funny about this, but this is why I try to get people exposed to the other things of the Little Red Door, because the camp now, we've now got the camp and the day camps or whatever. We're doing pretty well. I mean, we don't have that waiting list, right? We don't have kids that we're denying, and that's a good thing, right? And I'm sure there's some, but we've reached as far north, and I mean, so it's kind of like you got to change your focus a little bit, right? So, and what we're trying to get people to think about all these other things, think about people with transportation, trying to get people to do all that thing because that's really where it's at.
Yeah.
Bob's being very humble. It was through his support that we were able to create our whole Beyond the Woods programming. So that is all of the programs to keep kids connected to one another past camp. So it started with camp, and then we were able to grow to camp in the city, family camps, now Beyond the Woods, and now all of these other services. And if it weren't for Bob's friendship and leadership, we wouldn't be able to have those things.
And how do kids stay connected post-camp?
Technology's been wonderful. But beyond that, we do a lot of pop-up picnics. So we heat map where all of our kiddos are. So we have a bulk up in Allen County in the Fort Wayne area. And so we'll do a pop-up up there. We've got a pop-up just throughout the state to bring kids together with one another. But lots of Zoom calls, lots of social media, those kind of things too.
Right.
So technology, for right or wrong, has been very helpful to keep these kids connected. From the time your listeners woke up today to the time they go to bed, one kid in the state of Indiana will be diagnosed with cancer. And so while that's not a huge number, that's a big number to that one family. And that's a lonely number to that one kiddo. And so for our peds, we see about 350 kids will be diagnosed this year. And so for most of their life, they're their only ones in their school system that have, or their church or their community that has cancer. And so nobody else really knows what they're going through. And to Dawn's question earlier, they don't know how to relate to that child. And so for them to have Camp Little Red Door and have that connectivity with other kids that are going through and understanding it is really critical in all the levels of life.
Well, the kids, one speaker one year got up and said, when they shaved my head and then I showed up at camp and there's half the kids, their heads were shaved.
Yeah.
Where in your classroom, you're the only kid with a shaved head.
Right.
It's tough, right? Kids are tough. So, and they were saying that my sibling was there, and my sibling knew how to deal with all the kids, how to, help them and do whatever without being like condescending because they'd been dealing with the cancer. So as a result, all the campers then become closer and their siblings become closer because now they've got this shared experience for 7 days, right? So the reason why this really resonates is then they go out into the community, then they go out to do their things, and this networking is now kind of a mini support group. Well, you don't get that if you just show up somewhere.
Yeah, right.
So.
That is beautiful.
Well, we thank you both for being here and for sharing about Little Red Door and sharing more just about your wisdom on giving back to the community. Does anybody have anything that they want to close out on? Any final thoughts? Bob,
I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity. And again, we're always looking for people that, Citizen 7, that have some passion to do something. So if we've made you feel bad because all you've done is write a check, then I'm never feel bad about asking people to write checks. So, but I think at the end of the day, that's the point. There are plenty of opportunities out there, but this community, to build a better community. We said this the other day, and some young folks, is to build a better community, we got to strengthen the most vulnerable. I mean, that's the key.
Yeah.
You're not going to, I don't need any help. You don't need any help. But if the vulnerable are not strengthened, and our lowest and our most vulnerable are not strengthened, then we're not going to strengthen this community.
Mandy, if people want to give time, I mean, what opportunities do people have to give time to Little Red Door?
Yes. Board, of course. Bob sold that experience so well, but we do have the best board in town. That's a great way to give your time. And it's really your advice and counsel that I need the most on those things. But another quick way to give time is we have different events that come up. The Camp in the City that we talked about earlier, we're always looking for courageous volunteers to do chaperoning of field trips and things during that week, or even stuffing those care packages. And so we've got a team of 19 at the agency, and if I have a staff person creating care packages, then that means they're not navigating someone through cancer. And so it's really helpful when I have volunteers, hands and hearts downstairs helping us with those tasks.
So if people want to learn more and they want to get in contact with Little Red Door or you, tell us how.
LittleRedDoor.org is the quickest, is our website. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
All right. And thank you for joining us. We thank you for joining Mandy, Bob. Thank you for joining us. Don and Greg, obviously, thanks so much for inviting Bob and Mandy to share some of this with us. And we thank you for joining us here online. You can join us live here on Zoom and ask a question each and every fourth Monday of the month at noon. You can sign up at citizens7indy.org. That's the number 7. You can sign up for the email to find out when that is going to be. And then what events do we have coming up soon, Don or Greg?
We've got a polo night, family polo night, where you just bring a carload at the end of August. I've got Mitch Daniels coming in November, and also have Aaron Brockett coming for a meetup in September. So lots of stuff going on.
And you can learn more about that at citizen7indy.com. And I said org earlier. Forgive me, it's .com. I've been on vacation for a week. This is my first day back. And so I have forgotten everything from the previous 6 months. So that link is in the description if you want to find out more. And please invite friends. You're welcome to come. And if you learned something on this episode, then please share it with friends. We'll see you again next month.